720,000. That is the number of known animal species on Earth today. 720,000 distinct, functioning, genetically unique forms of life sharing one small, rocky planet orbiting an ordinary star in the outer arm of an average galaxy. That number should bother you. Here is why. Researchers have discovered approximately 5,000 exoplanets orbiting distant stars. They have analyzed the atmospheres of dozens of them. They have studied temperature ranges, chemical signatures, and the potential for liquid water. Based on everything learned so far, many models suggest that a planet with Earth's size, age, and location would be expected to support somewhere between 10,000 and 50,000 species. Not 720,000. Not even close. Earth does not simply have life. Earth has an amount of life that appears extraordinarily difficult to explain. More species per square mile than many models predict. More genetic diversity than expected. More biological complexity than a single planet should reasonably produce in 4 billion years. And it becomes even stranger. Earth has not only maintained that diversity, it has rebuilt it. 5 separate mass extinction events reduced life on this planet dramatically. 5 times the biosphere came close to collapse. And 5 times life did not simply recover. It expanded. Each recovery eventually produced more diversity than existed before, almost as though something was restocking the shelves. What if that is exactly what happened? What if Earth is not simply a planet where life emerged? What if Earth is a repository, a galactic seed bank, a biological archive where species from across the galaxy are collected, preserved, and maintained? Not through chance, not through accident, but through deliberate design. What if every extinction event is not simply a catastrophe? What if it is a retrieval? And what if humanity does not own this planet at all? What if humanity serves as the caretaker of a collection it does not even realize exists? Let us begin with the event that continues challenging evolutionary biology. Approximately 541 million years ago, something extraordinary happened. Before the Cambrian explosion, life on Earth remained comparatively simple. Single-celled organisms. Bacterial mats. Soft-bodied creatures without eyes, shells, brains, or complex anatomy. For roughly 3 billion years, biological complexity advanced very slowly. Then, within what geologists consider a remarkably short period, approximately 20 million years, nearly every major animal body plan appeared. Eyes, shells, legs, spines, complex nervous systems, circulatory systems, digestive systems, predator and prey relationships. Nearly every fundamental architecture of animal life appeared within an extremely compressed period of geological time. Many evolutionary biologists acknowledge this remains one of the most remarkable transitions in Earth's history. Stephen Jay Gould described the Cambrian explosion as one of the most puzzling events in the history of life. He spent much of his career examining possible explanations within conventional evolutionary theory. The standard explanations involve changing oxygen levels, increasing ecological pressure, and the evolution of genetic regulatory systems. Those ideas explain portions of the story. But many researchers continue debating whether they fully explain the speed and scale of what occurred. Increasing oxygen alone does not create an eye. Predator pressure alone does not generate dozens of fundamentally different body plans in such a relatively short interval. The Cambrian explosion has often been described as looking almost like an introduction event, as though numerous biological blueprints appeared together rather than gradually emerging one at a time. Now consider another mystery: living fossils. These are organisms that appear in the fossil record, disappear for millions of years, and are later found alive with remarkably little change. almost as though they had been removed from circulation and then returned. The coelacanth is perhaps the best-known example. It first appeared approximately 400 million years ago. Scientists believed it became extinct 66 million years ago. Then, in 1938, fishermen caught a living specimen off the coast of South Africa. The animal closely resembled fossil examples hundreds of millions of years older. The nautilus presents another example. Its basic body plan has persisted for roughly 500 million years through multiple extinction events, with surprisingly little modification. The horseshoe crab has existed for approximately 450 million years. It survived all 5 major extinction events, while remaining remarkably similar throughout that immense span of time. The woolly pine tells another unusual story. Known previously only through ancient fossils, it was believed extinct until living trees were discovered in Australia during 1994. How does a species disappear from the fossil record for immense periods and later appear almost unchanged? Where did it survive? One possibility involves extremely isolated populations. Another possibility has been proposed by those who believe Earth may function as something much larger. A biological archive preserving small populations until conditions become favorable again. Now let us examine one of the subjects evolutionary biologists continue debating: convergent evolution. Convergent evolution describes situations where unrelated species develop remarkably similar biological solutions, despite following entirely separate evolutionary paths. The standard explanation is straightforward. Certain designs are simply so effective that evolution discovers them repeatedly. The eye provides one of the best-known examples. Researchers estimate that image-forming eyes evolved independently at least 40 separate times across unrelated branches of life. The same general solution. The same basic function. The same optical principles. 40 separate evolutionary pathways arriving at remarkably similar outcomes. That is the accepted explanation. Here is why some researchers continue debating it. Developing a camera-style eye requires numerous complex components working together. A lens, a retina, an iris, an optic nerve, brain structures capable of processing visual information. Each component depends upon the others. A lens without a retina provides no advantage. A retina without neural processing provides no useful vision. Yet comparable visual systems appear repeatedly across unrelated evolutionary lineages. And eyes are only the beginning. Consider dolphins and ichthyosaurs. One is a mammal that returned to the ocean roughly 60 million years ago. The other was a marine reptile that lived approximately 250 million years ago. Separated by immense spans of time and completely different evolutionary histories. Yet their body shapes appear strikingly similar. The same streamlined profile. The same fin placement. The same general hunting strategy. Powered flight developed independently in birds and bats. Echolocation appeared independently in bats, dolphins, and several species of cave-dwelling birds. The sugar glider of Australia and the flying squirrel of North America possess remarkably similar gliding membranes, despite being separated by approximately 150 million years of evolutionary divergence. One is a marsupial. The other is a placental mammal. They evolved on opposite sides of the world. Yet they arrived at almost identical designs. The traditional explanation argues that physics and environmental pressures naturally favor these solutions. For many scientists, that explanation is entirely sufficient. Others continue asking additional questions. Dr. Simon Conway Morris at Cambridge University has spent decades studying convergent evolution. His work documents hundreds of examples where unrelated organisms developed strikingly similar traits. In discussing these patterns, he has suggested that evolutionary outcomes sometimes appear strongly constrained toward particular solutions. Some readers have interpreted this as suggesting that evolution may be more directional than purely random. Whether that interpretation is correct remains an active area of scientific discussion, but it raises an intriguing possibility. What if convergent evolution does not represent repeated invention? What if it represents repeated use of the same biological templates? Imagine an engineer designing different vehicles. The same engine can appear in multiple models because it already works. The surrounding structure changes. The core design remains. If Earth functions as a biological repository managed over immense spans of time, convergent evolution becomes easier to imagine. Not because each species independently invents the same solution, but because successful designs are reused whenever similar environmental challenges appear. Now consider the 5 great extinction events, because together they reveal one of the most remarkable patterns in Earth's history. Approximately 443 million years ago came the Ordovician extinction. Roughly 85% of species disappeared. Yet over time, biodiversity recovered and eventually exceeded previous levels. Approximately 372 million years ago came the late Devonian extinction. Again, roughly 3/4 of species vanished. Again, biodiversity eventually expanded. Then came the Permian-Triassic extinction approximately 252 million years ago. Nearly 96% of all species disappeared. The closest Earth has ever come to complete biological collapse. Yet afterward came one of the greatest expansions of biodiversity the planet has ever seen. Dinosaurs, mammals, flowering plants, modern insects. Entire ecosystems flourished after the greatest extinction event in Earth's history. The pattern repeated approximately 201 million years ago during the Triassic-Jurassic extinction. Around 80% of species disappeared. Life recovered, then diversified again. Finally came the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction 66 million years ago. Roughly 75% of species vanished, including nearly all non-avian dinosaurs. Once again, life recovered. Mammals diversified dramatically, eventually leading to primates, and eventually to humanity. 5 major extinction events. 5 recoveries. 5 periods where biodiversity eventually exceeded what had existed before. Rather than simple recovery, the pattern often resembles expansion. That observation has inspired one of the more provocative ideas explored in this investigation. What if these events represent more than natural catastrophe? What if they resemble cycles of removal followed by replenishment, almost like a carefully managed collection rotating through time? A seed bank does more than store specimens. It rotates them. Older samples are removed. New samples are added. The collection is maintained, curated, updated. Some people suggest that Earth's extinction events resemble that same pattern. Removal, clearance, replenishment, expansion. Whether that comparison reflects reality or only coincidence remains an open question. Now, consider something even larger. If Earth truly functioned as a biological repository, where would such a collection be managed from? One possibility is the Moon, approximately 238,000 miles away, tidally locked so the same face always points toward Earth. A stable observation platform, close enough to monitor this planet continuously. In our earlier investigation into the Apollo missions, we explored claims that astronauts may have encountered evidence suggesting something unusual already existed there. If any of those claims were true, the Moon would represent an ideal observation point. Another possibility is the deep ocean. More than 70% of Earth's surface is covered by water. Much of the deep ocean remains unexplored. It is protected from radiation, protected from many surface catastrophes, remarkably stable over geological time. Every major extinction devastated land environments and shallow seas. The deepest ocean regions survived each event with comparatively little disruption. If someone intended to preserve biological material across immense spans of time, few places would offer greater long-term stability. Then there is Antarctica, a continent sealed beneath ice for millions of years. Deep beneath that ice lie isolated lakes cut off from the atmosphere for extraordinary lengths of time. As explored in our earlier investigation, researchers studying some of these environments have identified unusual microorganisms unlike those found elsewhere. Whether those organisms evolved entirely in isolation or represent something even more unusual remains uncertain. But Antarctica unquestionably preserves biological systems unlike any found on the surface. What if the archive is not located in one place? What if it is distributed? The moon providing observation. The deep ocean preserving active biological material. Antarctica functioning as long-term storage beneath the ice. A three-part system designed to protect life through billions of years of planetary change. Now consider humanity's place within that possibility. Modern humans appeared approximately 300,000 years ago. From an evolutionary perspective, our rise has been remarkably rapid. Language, abstract thought, science, engineering, art, philosophy. Within only a few thousand years, humanity progressed from stone tools to spacecraft. No previous species appears to have accelerated technologically at anything approaching this pace. Some interpret that acceleration as the natural consequence of intelligence reaching a critical threshold. Others wonder whether humanity serves another purpose entirely. What if our role is not ownership? What if our role is stewardship? The planet has accumulated extraordinary biological diversity across immense spans of time. Eventually, someone would need to catalog it, study it, preserve it, understand how its countless species relate to one another. Remarkably, that is exactly what humanity has begun doing. The global seed vault in Svalbard preserves agricultural diversity. Frozen embryo banks protect endangered species. Genome sequencing projects are documenting the DNA of thousands of organisms. Across the world, scientists are building enormous biological archives. We assume we are doing this to protect nature from ourselves. Another possibility asks a very different question. What if preserving life is the reason we exist? What if the desire to catalog and protect biodiversity is not simply a cultural value? What if it is part of our function? The function of caretakers maintaining a collection they did not create. Now comes the possibility that has kept many people thinking long after hearing this theory. If extinction events represent retrieval rather than destruction, then perhaps the next great extinction is not simply something to avoid. Perhaps it is part of a recurring cycle, something returning to collect what has been preserved. And perhaps that collection includes us. Think about what is happening right now. Species are disappearing at an accelerating rate. Climate systems are becoming increasingly unstable. Ecosystems are changing around the world. Most people interpret these developments as humanity damaging the natural world. But this investigation asks a different question. What if some of what we call extinction is actually collection? What if certain species are not disappearing forever? What if they are simply being removed from the archive? Every year, thousands of species vanish. The causes are usually attributed to habitat loss, pollution, climate change, invasive species, and human activity. Those explanations are well supported. But this theory imagines another possibility existing alongside them. Perhaps some disappearances are not endings at all. Perhaps they are retrievals. Species leaving the repository because their time here has ended. or because they are needed somewhere else, or because another cycle is beginning. That idea leads to another unsettling thought. Extinct species often disappear with surprisingly little physical evidence compared with the populations they once represented. The fossil record preserves only fragments. Entire ecosystems vanish, leaving remarkably little behind. This investigation asks a speculative question. What if some of those organisms did not simply die here? What if they were removed? If Earth's history really follows repeating cycles, then every previous rotation followed the same sequence. Existing life diminished. New diversity appeared. The collection expanded. Again and again. 5 major rotations across Earth's history. Each one leaving the planet richer in biological diversity than before, and each one replacing the dominant forms of life that existed previously. Today, humanity occupies that position. We are the dominant species. We are also the species that has begun systematically cataloging life itself. Perhaps that is coincidence. Perhaps it is something more. 720,000 known animal species. An astonishing number for one planet. Unless this world was intended to preserve extraordinary diversity. Unless Earth has always served another purpose. Not merely a home. Not merely a cradle. But a vault. A living archive. A biological repository maintained across billions of years. An immense collection assembled from places humanity has never seen. Protected through repeated cycles that we now recognize only as mass extinctions. If that interpretation were true, then perhaps another rotation approaches. Perhaps another inventory is beginning. And perhaps the caretakers themselves eventually become part of the collection. If the possibility that Earth functions as a biological repository has changed the way you look at every living thing around you, there are other investigations that continue this idea. One explores who or what may have been observing Earth from the moon. Another examines what may be preserved beneath Antarctica's ancient ice. Together they ask whether our planet has been managed for far longer than human civilization has existed. Until then, look at the natural world a little differently. Every plant, every animal, every insect, every living organism you encounter. Ask yourself how it arrived here, how long it has existed, and whether this planet has always been exactly what it appears to be, or something far larger, a library of life, still open, still growing, waiting for the day when the next inventory begins. And when that day arrives, the only remaining question may be whether the caretakers remain behind, or leave with the collection.